In the 1970s, over 18.5 million households watched her every week. Her face sold more than $30 million worth of merchandise in a single year. Her posters hung in 1 out of every 7 American bedrooms. And when Playboy conducted a national poll in 1978, Lynda Carter was voted the most desired woman in America. But behind those dazzling numbers was a nightmare. Because while America worshipped her as Wonder Woman, someone in Hollywood was watching her, literally. A hidden hole, half an inch wide, drilled into her dressing room wall. Every time she changed, a stranger's eye stared back. Every movement recorded. Every secret stolen. She was filmed without consent, her privacy auctioned to tabloids that sold 1.2 million copies of exclusive Carter footage. Fake nude photos spread across Europe, printed in adult magazines from London to Tokyo. Her name, twisted into scandal. Her body, turned into public property. Lynda Carter was not a goddess. She was a victim of a billion-dollar machine that fed on beauty and broke souls. The media called her the perfect woman, but perfection was her prison. They sold her image. They silenced her truth. And when she finally spoke, years later, her voice trembled. They even drilled a hole in my dressing room wall. Someone was watching me, every day. That wasn't Hollywood glamour. That was psychological warfare, disguised as fame. The same cameras that made her immortal. Made her bleed. This isn't just the story of a fallen star. It's the story of how Hollywood crowned a hero. And then crucified her. Lynda Carter, the untold scandal of Wonder Woman. Before the scandal. Before the invasion. There was a dream, one built on ambition, beauty, and a country desperate for a heroine. Lynda Jean Carter was born on July 24, 1951, in Phoenix, Arizona, the middle-class daughter of a schoolteacher and a businessman. Half Mexican, half American, she grew up in a world that rarely celebrated women who looked like her. At just 5 feet 9 inches tall, with piercing blue eyes and a calm defiance, she learned early that beauty could be both armor and weapon. By her teenage years, she was performing in bands across the Southwest, singing in smoky bars while still underage. At age 21, she entered the Miss World USA pageant, and won. That victory sent her to Miss World 1972 in London, where she finished among the finalists, competing against over 50 contestants from around the world. It was more than a crown. It was a passport, straight into Hollywood. In 1975, Warner Brothers took a gamble on a comic book adaptation that nobody believed in. They needed a face. A fantasy. A woman who could embody purity, patriotism, and temptation. Lynda Carter became their answer. Wonder Woman premiered on November 7, 1975, on ABC. The ratings exploded, 18.5 million households tuned in, an audience share of 39%, making it one of the most watched new series of the decade. In its first year, the show generated $30 million in merchandising sales, from dolls to posters to t-shirts. By 1978, the franchise had made over $75 million globally, all built on one woman's face and body. But this wasn't empowerment. It was exploitation disguised as patriotism. On screen, she deflected bullets. Off screen, she couldn't deflect greed. Producers scrutinized every inch of her, demanding camera tests to measure public reaction. Executives charted her sex appeal rating as if it were a stock market figure. Every costume fitting became a negotiation between art and exposure. One memo from a network executive, leaked decades later, literally read, "Reduce the top by half an inch. It tests better with male audiences." Each time the network pushed her image further, ratings climbed. When she wore tighter suits, viewership rose 12% overnight. When she appeared in a swimsuit on magazine covers, sales doubled. Hollywood called it success. Lynda called it humiliation. Behind the glitter, she lived in fear of her own image. Her smile, her stance, her silence, all dictated by men who saw her not as a person, but as a product. She worked 16-hour days, 5 days a week, surrounded by a crew of over 120 men, many of whom treated her beauty as invitation, not professionalism. Her co-stars later admitted that Wonder Woman's set had no boundaries when it came to objectifying her. She was admired by millions, but respected by few. Hollywood's machine wanted perfection, but perfection came with a price. Each episode pushed her closer to exhaustion. She began losing weight, 15 pounds in 6 months, due to relentless pressure to maintain the ideal silhouette. Tabloids tracked her every fluctuation, labeling her too thin 1 week and too soft the next. No one asked how she felt. They only asked how she looked. By 1978, Lynda Carter had become a paradox, the face of female empowerment trapped inside a patriarchal fantasy. Her interviews grew more defensive. Her laughter, more forced. When asked how it felt to be America's sex symbol, she smiled and replied, "It's not who I am, it's who they want me to be." Every appearance, every red carpet, was another performance. She was playing 2 roles, Wonder Woman for the world, and a broken woman for herself. Hollywood crowned her a goddess, but they never let her be human. Behind the curtain, she was already unraveling, haunted by the eyes that followed her everywhere. In interviews, she hinted at unease. "Sometimes I feel like I'm living inside a glass box." But no one listened. Because Lynda Carter wasn't supposed to feel. She was supposed to shine. And as the ratings soared into the millions, as Wonder Woman became a global brand worth more than $100 million by 1980, the cracks beneath her armor began to spread. The audience saw a hero in red boots and golden cuffs. What they didn't see was the woman being hunted by her own fame. The rise was over. The fall had already begun. By 1979, the crown had turned to thorns. The same cameras that once celebrated Lynda Carter now hunted her like prey. Every frame, every photo, every word she spoke was twisted into fuel for the machine. Hollywood had made her a legend, now it was preparing to destroy her. The violation began quietly. A rumor. A whisper. Then, an explosion. One morning, Lynda walked onto the set of Wonder Woman to find a crowd of crewmen huddled in laughter. Someone had passed around private footage, grainy, voyeuristic, filmed through a hole in her dressing room wall. That half-inch circle, carved by a hand she would never identify, had turned her sanctuary into a stage. Within weeks, copies of the footage were whispered to have surfaced in the black market, fetching up to $5,000 per tape in Los Angeles. By the time the tabloids caught wind, it was too late. The headlines were merciless. Wonder Woman's secret tapes. Lynda's private life exposed. In Europe and Japan, adult magazines printed doctored photographs under her name, selling 1.2 million copies in the first month alone. The truth didn't matter. The scandal sold. She begged the studio to intervene. But Warner executives dismissed it as rumors of no consequence. To them, her body was already public property. One producer was quoted saying, "Any press is good press, it keeps her hot." Hot. That was the word they used for pain. While the world ogled her, Lynda Carter was crumbling. Friends recalled her locking herself in her trailer for hours, trembling. She refused to undress in the dressing room again. Sometimes she changed in her car, shaking beneath the tinted glass. By the end of the third season, she had lost nearly 20 pounds and was suffering from chronic insomnia. She later admitted she drank herself numb at night, just to stop hearing the cameras in my head. And then came the breaking point. In 1980, the Wonder Woman series was cancelled. To the public, it was creative fatigue. But for Lynda, it was an execution. The tabloids moved fast. Was the scandal to blame? Splashed across the front of the National Enquirer, which sold over 1.5 million copies that week. For the first time, she was unemployed, unprotected, and utterly alone. Every network rejected her for new roles. One casting director reportedly told her agent, "She's too recognizable, and too risky." Her fame had become a curse. Behind closed doors, she began a silent descent. Her marriage to talent agent Ron Samuels unraveled amid rumors of control and manipulation. He managed her contracts, and her life. He decided what she wore, who she spoke to, and how she smiled. Friends called it a beautiful cage. The woman who once inspired millions of girls to stand tall now struggled to stand at all. In interviews, she masked her despair with laughter. But the pain leaked through. When asked about fame, she said, "It's a monster that eats you alive. It takes everything, your peace, your privacy, your pride." By 1982, Lynda Carter's image was everywhere but her spirit was nowhere. The tapes, the fake photos, the headlines, they had all blurred together into a single nightmare that never ended. She turned to alcohol to drown the noise. The glamorous Wonder Woman of America was now a woman sitting in silence, staring into her drink. Then came one final humiliation, one she had no control over. Her husband at the time, businessman Robert Altman, became entangled in the BCCI financial scandal of the late 1980s, one of the largest banking frauds in history. Headlines screamed, "Wonder Woman's husband on trial." Cameras followed her into courtrooms. Tabloids revived old photos, some real, some not, attaching new lies to familiar wounds. It didn't matter that Altman was later acquitted. The damage was done. By the early 1990s, Lynda Carter had vanished from the spotlight. Her name, once synonymous with strength and beauty, had become shorthand for scandal and tragedy. She stopped giving interviews. She turned down film offers. For nearly a decade, she disappeared from Hollywood, a ghost of the woman America once adored. The world moved on. The magazines found new obsessions. But Lynda Carter remained trapped in the past. A face that had been watched, violated, sold, and discarded. In the quiet of her home, she began confronting the truth she had buried for years. The cameras never really stopped watching her. Even when they were gone, they lived inside her, in every mirror, every memory, every flash of light. Lynda Carter had been the symbol of empowerment for a generation. But beneath the legend was a woman who had been stripped of everything: privacy, peace, and pride. She once told a friend, "I don't hate Wonder Woman. I just hate what they did to her, and to me." And so, by the time the cameras turned away, the world's Wonder Woman was gone. And in her place stood only a survivor, cloaked in pain, and waiting for redemption. For more than a decade, Lynda Carter vanished. No interviews. No red carpets. Just whispers: "She disappeared," they said. But in truth, she wasn't gone. She was healing. In the early 1990s, Lynda entered rehab for alcohol addiction. She would later admit, "I was drowning, not in liquor, but in shame." For years, she had been everyone's fantasy but no one's friend. Now, for the first time, she faced the mirror and saw not Wonder Woman, but a woman who had survived. Her comeback wasn't scripted. It began quietly, through music, the passion she had before fame. In 2009, she released her jazz album, At Last, which reached Billboard's top 10 jazz chart within a week. Critics called it a voice reborn. But her truest voice emerged not in song, but in truth. In 2018, amid the #MeToo movement, Lynda Carter broke her silence. She revealed that she, too, had been a victim, watched, exploited, and ignored. Her statement hit headlines across 40 countries within 24 hours. For millions of women who had grown up idolizing her, this wasn't weakness. It was revolution. She said, "There was a man who abused me, and I'm not going to name him. But I see him being punished now. And I feel free." Hollywood had tried to bury her story. Instead, she turned it into a weapon. Today, Lynda Carter uses her platform to fight for women's rights, mental health, and the survivors of abuse. Her social campaigns have reached over 50 million viewers online, and her voice, calm yet fierce, carries the power of a woman who has seen darkness and chosen light. And when she appeared in Wonder Woman 1984, 2020, as Asteria, the Golden Warrior, audiences stood and cheered. It wasn't nostalgia. It was justice. Lynda Carter was no longer the fantasy that Hollywood sold. She was the truth that Hollywood tried to silence. They watched her suffer. Now, they watch her rise. Time has a way of rewriting legends. Once, Lynda Carter was the woman the world wanted to possess. Now, she is the woman the world wishes it had protected. For decades after Wonder Woman, her story has outgrown the scandal. She has become a symbol, not of perfection, but of endurance. Her courage reshaped how Hollywood talks about privacy, consent, and exploitation. And her pain gave strength to an entire generation of women who refused to be silent. Across social media, her name trends again, not as a fantasy, but as a fighter. Clips of her old interviews have been viewed over 25 million times, her words rediscovered like lost prophecy. She speaks of dignity, of self-worth, of reclaiming identity. And each sentence carries the quiet defiance of someone who has walked through hell and returned with fire. In the end, Lynda Carter did not destroy her demons. She outlived them. Her story is no longer about the scandal they sold, but about the truth she owns. When the lights fade and the headlines rot, one image remains. Not the woman in red and gold, but the woman who learned to be human again. Because heroes aren't the ones who never fall. They're the ones who rise, even when the world watches them burn. She was Wonder Woman once. Now, she's something greater. Lynda Carter, the woman who turned her pain into power.